Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts speaking to you from our Washington, D.C. Bureau. It is Friday, January 31st. I am joined by our all-star panel of top local journalists, Josh Molina of the esteemed podcast Santa Barbara Talks and also Newshawk, Ryan P. Cruz, staff writer for The Independent, and Nick Welsh, the angry poodle his own self, executive editor of the Santa Barbara Independent. Thanks, fellas, for being with me. Ryan, let me start with you. You've been doing some reporting on the immigration issue since Trump has taken over, and very powerful stuff. You wrote about fear, panic, and uncertainty at the prospect of deportation, but also that there are organizations recommending people fight panic with power. What's the mood that you're hearing?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of alarming how quickly this happened. Feels like overnight almost, literally overnight. We have ICE sightings in our own neighborhoods and stuff like that. So, a lot of people, a lot of these organizations were around since the first Trump administration. So, they kind of banded together again and they knew this was going to happen. But, the big thing right now is understanding what level of panic people should be at. This past weekend, I was getting flooded with messages. People were saying there might be an ICE checkpoint over here. They're rounding up people. So it was very, very hard to understand what the level was actually at, like, of the ICE of their presence in town. And it looks like, after the dust started to settle, that they were looking for a couple individuals that were known criminals. But in the course of doing that, they were not being very careful about, if somebody else was there in that house and they were also undocumented, they were likely to get detained also.
Yeah,
Um,
when I talked to the sheriff about a week ago, he said they just will be looking for bad guys, but there might be, quote, collateral arrests, which
yeah,
means,
and that's what we're seeing. And the thing right now is to be mindful of, don't spread unnecessary panic. There's a lot of great community organizations out there. 805 Undocu has been, right there on the front reporting
is
these.
that they have what, a hotline
They have a rapid response hotline. They are working with Cause and, the Immigrant Legal Defense Center and Importa SB. These are all, really good organizations in La Casa de la Raza that are really sticking together. And, there's supposed to be a demonstration tonight. And, I just want everybody to be very careful. And this is a moment, I think, where we want to see, the well-meaning white people of Santa Barbara really stand together, like we see for women's issues, we see for Palestine protests. The people that are undocumented, their bodies are on the line if they're gonna be out there protesting. So we really need more community members willing to, if not protest, but just work this hotline and kind of take part in this, because this is something that people are afraid to take their kids to school. People are not signing their kids up for youth soccer because you go out to the park, you don't know if ICE is going to show up there. And nationwide, they're not being very forthcoming about when these things are happening, and they're just posting their nationwide daily
the
statistics on their
fear,
Twitter,
the fear
basically.
and the terror are part of the strategy.
It's a
That's the whole
shock and
thing.
awe. Definitely. It's all part of this plan. And that's why, a lot of these organizations and what our job is too as journalists is to make people understand, there is stuff to be afraid about, but what level, we don't want people to be too afraid to the point of, you should respect what's going on, but part of it is he wants us to be afraid. He wants people that are Mexican and undocumented to feel guilty for who they are, for their bodies. He wants them to feel afraid to be themselves, and that is kind of part of this whole design.
Well,
So
Ryan, to that point, I was getting them, and I know you were getting them way more than me. I was 300 people, 400 people, 12
yeah,
people.
you
Did
know
you
there.
come up with any number of like how many people actually have been?
Nick, pull your screen down a little bit. We can't see all
Yeah, so
your.
that's really hard. They're not coming out with right now these district statistics. So I went back to 2017 where they were doing similar, 1,000 arrests a day. And when you look at that, they were doing about 100 in LA and then about 10 to 12 in Santa Barbara County. So if they are doing about 1,000 per day, I would say it's closer to that number 10 than this 300 number, which is that's very scary. I really hope they're not rounding up hundreds of people. We had in Bakersfield, there was one that 78 people got rounded up. And this is going to have a huge effect on obviously the farm worker industry and agriculture industry.
Every industry.
Who is going to work those jobs? Who is going to crowd 10 people to a 3-bedroom apartment so they can work in farm worker role? Who's going to pay work those hours for that low pay? I don't know any Americans or any group of Americans. Are they going to have teenagers work? I don't know what is going to happen other than the prices are going to skyrocket.
Right.
All right. Josh, we had a little set to at City Hall about my favorite ballot measure, Measure I, which raised the sales tax, a 0.5% or 1/4%? I forget. Whatever it was.
It was 1/4 cent. I'm going to actually go out of character here and be nice and say, Ryan, you did a good job because you posted the immigration sweeps on like a Sunday, I think, as they were happening, and social media was buzzing with stuff. So that was pretty good to do that. And just a reminder that journalists work 24/7, and we have to. We're not cops. We're not firefighters. We don't get that kind of credit or benefits.
That kind of pay either.
But
Yeah,
we're paying. But we have to be available when the news breaks. So I think
100%. I'm a big sports fan, and that the Eagles and Commanders were playing right when that happened. And my journalistic sense, I'm getting a lot of messages. This is important. You can pause the game. You can go back to it. You can put it on mute, and get something up about this because it's fear spreading really quickly. I know there's DUI checkpoints happening in Santa Barbara this weekend, and I want people to know. And Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez is sending it out everywhere on social media. Those have nothing to do with ICE checkpoints. So it's getting these messages out there to the community.
And local law enforcement does not check immigration.
Yes, they're not playing ball. They're not gonna ask for if you're documented or anything like that.
Yeah. All right.
And with all due respect, the Commanders, and the Eagles wasn't really a game there.
That wasn't a game. That wasn't a whole lot. That wasn't a big sacrifice. That was a slaughter.
It was, well, except for the 3 turnovers, it would have been a really good game, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was
they got their money, right? Everybody voted for it. Now they're going to fight about where it's going.
Well, it was kind of stunning because it was another public relations sort of problem, snafu for City Hall. And I don't mean like Brian Latchford and the PR people who do a good job there. I just mean in terms of how the budget department presented this issue so early, and it's just sort of out there. And so you had all these groups fighting over this money. And so apparently the money is going to be about 15.1 million, and 10.1 of that is already going to clear the deficit, the projected deficit. So there were people in the room who were like, wait a minute, we didn't know about that, even though that was talked about if you were paying attention.
That was the whole thrust of the campaign. Well, there wasn't much of a campaign, but that was the
it was talked about. It wasn't like it was a surprise. But what happened is all of the housing people, the nonprofits, the housing authority, CLU, the advocacy groups were saying, wait a minute, you're only going to give $1 to $2 million of this to affordable housing? We thought this was going to be a huge priority. And at the same time, they were recommending filling law enforcement positions. So you had this choice seemingly between law enforcement and then library hours and then housing. So it was a big mess up. I mean, the decision to bring that to the council in January before the budget is even out was a big mistake. Now, their priorities or their idea might have been, oh, let's talk about this early. But just like with the paid parking that they tried to unveil a year ago, like if you unveil something too early without any plan, it's going to explode in their face. So what happened? The council just basically said, this is too early. We don't even have the budget. We don't really know what our numbers are actually going to be. So let's talk about it in the context of the budget. And so we're going to wait until April when the budget comes out before people, before the council decides how they're going to spend the money. Now, some people want like $5 million to go to all of it to go to housing. They want to pull from different funds, Measure C funds, the Housing Trust Fund. Others say, we want to extend the library hours. We want to fund these law enforcement positions. There's after school programs. So there's sort of a mix. I got the sense from the council that they want to do all of it. They do want to fund law enforcement.
What was Mike Jordan's problem? He's
Mike Jordan got defensive,
so obviously emboldened, but he got
defensive, and this is a trait that he has, and this is one of those reasons why people get upset at Mike Jordan, because he is not humble, and so he took offense to the fact that Clue, Habitat for Humanity, the Housing Authority, Rob Fredericks, the executive director, the beloved Rob Fredericks got up there and said, we have failed as a community on affordable housing. And so Jordan was saying, I don't appreciate being accused of saying that I was going to give all this money to housing. I was never part of those conversations. And you come up here saying as though you feel betrayed that we talked about that. Well, we didn't. And then he doubled down and said, and by the way, we have this housing trust fund that was supposed to be collaborative, community organizations contributing money so then it could be leveraged. And he said, no one in this room has given any money to that trust fund. So he pointed back at them. And, he does that sometimes if he feels like he's being unnecessarily challenged. He's done that to me in the room. He doesn't care who it is. He's like, if I feel unfairly criticized, I'm going to push back. And
so that was the housing trust fund was it was sort of the idea of Megan Harmon. Did she have anything to say about it?
Yeah, so it was her idea to take this $3 million surplus that they had and put it into a housing trust fund a couple of years ago. Megan Harmon is sick, and apparently everybody at City Hall is sick. There's a bunch of people sick. So she zoomed in. She basically said that we should wait for the budget discussions and we can figure out a way. And, the other thing complicating this is Measure C, right? This funding was supposed to go for housing. It's the general tax, but now it's paying for the police department, 25% of it. So there's kind of less money. So people are all fighting. But, if I were advising Santa Barbara City Hall in a public relations forum, I'd say, don't do this stuff. Don't like sit in a room and decide when you're going to present the information. And if it's half baked, you got to look at how people are going to react. This is Santa Barbara. People come out of the woodwork for every little thing. So it was just kind of a public relations problem. They'll fix it, but it's going to take some time. And I have a feeling everyone will get what they want. Police Chief Gordon was in the back of the room, by the way, on those law enforcement positions. She's there. She's making her presence known that these are valuable positions that they want filled as well. And, Oscar Gutierrez was for law enforcement. Wendy Santa Maria was for law enforcement. There didn't seem to be any pushback against law enforcement. It was, how do we do all of this?
Yeah. All right. Nick, you wrote about one of these big issues that's kind of lurking out there that we don't really hear about on a daily basis, which is put your screen down a little. So
I don't know how to do that.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind. Oh, we can just see your eyes.
I tried. I know.
Get on a book, Nick.
I apologize.
Yeah,
Maybe you could go show somebody else's face with my words.
If we still had phone books, you could sit on a phone book, but we don't have. Anyway.
There you go.
Okay, is that better?
That's much better.
Okay, good. All
so
right.
The supervisors got this report, which you called a bombshell report, and PPIC, the Public Policy Institute of California, had, I don't know, coincidentally or not, had a report come out as well that basically geezers are there's a huge wave that's about to crest that's going to take a lot of public monies and a lot of other issues that we're not prepared for.
It's a sort of another, chickens coming home to roost, sky is falling scenario. The demographic bulge that you and I happen to occupy, 60 and up, I think it's 1/4 by 2030, we're going to make up 1/4 of the county's population. And the implications of that are profound in terms of housing, in terms of where people go, where the money is, the relative poverty rate of people in this age range is quite striking. The dearth of places for them to go if they have to leave
Dearth
their
of
home.
people to care for them as well.
And people to care for them. And the people who care for them are making such little money that they qualify for public assistance. And the other thing that really sort of jumped out and bit us in the behind reading it in context of what's happening today with Trump is that a very large chunk of the population of people who provide that care are not are immigrants. And we don't know what the percentage of those are documented or undocumented, but having had parents-in-law in some of these places, I can say a lot of them probably are not going to have documents, and it's going to be a profound jolt to reality when that workforce shrinks even more.
Yeah. And I mean, is there anything to be done? Is there any action that the supervisors are going to take?
Well, it's really what they're doing. This was the area agency on aging. I'm sure I'm getting that name incorrect, but they're putting together a big study for the county, which is going to be part of a broader statewide series of studies on this. So the state is looking at California and is saying, we see a big demographic geyser bubble. And part of this has to do with the affordability housing. So people who are younger with kids, a lot of them are getting out of the state because it's just not affordable. You can't raise a family. And so it's tilting. And so the state's looking at it. And so this was sort of the shot across the bow of another shot across the bow that's going to be coming later when they finalize the report where presumably they'll have come up with a plan. But what that plan will be, short of magic wand waving, I don't know.
Yeah. The problem is basically our bodies were not created to live past the age of 40. And we're all living to the age.
We all should have kicked the bucket.
And take it from me, after 40 and 50, it just goes downhill more and more rapidly. And you do need care. And it's hugely expensive for home health care.
Oh, no, it's amazing how much it is.
All right. And then I think the PPIC report had something they called a dependency ratio, which was by 2040, I think they said that there would be 38 people, dependents, these are over the hill dependents for every 100 people who are working. So then you begin to calculate, who's paying into Medicare and who's using Medicare. And same with Social Security now that Elon Musk has taken control of the payment system as well. So, all right, well, big deal. That's a big issue, and I'll look forward to your poodles on that in the future. Speaking of which, I thought one of your better pieces, your poodles, where you draw the parallels between Trump and President McKinley, the late President McKinley, because the first thing Trump wants to do in office is change the name of the highest point in the United States, Mount Denali, back to Mount McKinley. But there is a lot of interesting parallels there.
Really, I mean, it was one of those things. And Ryan, I hope you noticed the local hook. We
always has a local hook.
We had to have a local hook for me to justify this. McKinley came to Santa Barbara in May 1901, 4 months before he was assassinated in Buffalo, New York. But he was
in a horse-drawn carriage festooned with roses.
Yeah. And there's also a photo of him standing by the mission with some mission friars. And I'll tell you what, he does not look like he's having a lot of fun. I think William McKinley knew how to have fun, but not with the friars. But he was
big tariff guy.
Yeah, he was a president. He was really, when the United States made the jump from being a regular country to an empire, it was under William McKinley's watch. Under McKinley, we went to war with Spain. We got Cuba. We got Puerto Rico, we got Guam, we got the Philippines. All of this was
at the cost of 250,000 people.
in the Philippines. Yeah, I think we lost 4,200 people. The Philippine Army lost about 20,000, and 250,000 Philippine civilians were collateral damage. So this is just when people talk about,
this is Trump's hero. This is his new hero after Andrew Jackson.
Yeah. And so Trump wanted to name this guy, the Mount McKinley, after this guy. It was his name for a while, but the native communities in Alaska have referred to it as Denali for a long time. And under Obama, with the support of the Alaska legislature, they changed the name to Denali,
which is a red state, by the way, Alaska.
Yeah, and of course, your people in Ohio, where you're from, they all opposed because William McKinley came from Ohio, so they thought they were dissing Ohio. The other thing is he was all about tariffs. And he was like, kick everybody's ass with tariffs and threaten trade wars, which of course, I think this is probably going to wind up being a lot of saber rattling by Trump more than an actual war, because people like Elon Musk and the billionaires who are, what do they call them, the rogueocracy, they are of mixed minds about trade wars, but we'll see how that goes.
All right. Well, great column. Really, everybody should read the Poodle this week if you haven't. I guess it's last week's now, but just the parallels are just kind of uncanny.
The other thing I'll say about it's like, as a columnist, writing about Trump is such a tricky thing because everybody is in such a state of either high alarm or please shut up, that what do you say that can kind of get in through the filter that people will actually listen to? And so I tried this indirect route, and I thought if you can have an indirect reflection of what already happened and what's about to happen again, people might get tricked into reading it.
Yeah. Well, good. Nice work on that.
Well, thanks.
Hey, so Josh, food trucks, which are becoming increasingly ubiquitous on the streets of Santa Barbara. Now, there's a new attempt to regulate them at City Hall. Is that coming from Oscar, or Oscar's against it? I couldn't. What's the deal?
Well, it's coming from the city and the cops, who believe that the food trucks are causing disturbances with noise and lighting and people, safety issues, I should say, after 10 p.m. So they're talking about public areas, so streets. They want to basically say people can't sell after 10 p.m. or before 7 a.m. And so this is what they're trying to do to sort of crack down on what they perceive as, late night troubles on the west side or the east side. Councilman Oscar Gutierrez was actually very conflicted, as he said, because he felt as though people have to get up early, and farm workers or people who have to work very early jobs or multiple jobs. So they start early and they go to a separate job. And so they need food in the morning. And so those food trucks, if they open earlier than 6 or 7, that will be a place for them to eat. So he felt as though was unfairly punishing a group of people who have to get up really early.
Are they primarily local businesses or from elsewhere?
Well, these are, they're permitted. There are others that are unpermitted that I'm sure show up and come from out of the area and set up. And Oscar Gutierrez said, they might be the ones who don't play by the rules because they don't know the locals in the community. And so he suggested the city crack down on them, try to go after unpermitted food vendors, not try to further regulate people who are already playing by the rules. And Mike Jordan even, said, he says a lot of people when he he didn't say cuts through the west side, but goes to the west side on his way home on the mesa. He sees people who are out late eating. So there was a little bit of a pushback. Council member Jordan and some others had mentioned the idea of having like a food truck central place where everybody would go and that's where people could go eat at their food trucks. A little bit of issue there in terms of part of the appeal of the food truck is that they're in the neighborhoods. They aren't in some touristy area, public parking lot downtown serving whoever might be there.
Oh, just to jump
Supposed to
in,
be on the east side or the west side in these neighborhoods, and there's clientele there, and so there was some pushback there. Oscar Gutierrez didn't really like that idea of trying to formalize and centralize that. So that's where it's at. It was at the ordinance committee, so it's early, but it was so controversial that the three members of the ordinance committee, Kristen Sneddon, Oscar Gutierrez, Mike Jordan, they didn't take a vote. They just said, let's move this to the full council and have a broader discussion. Noah Vargas, who owns a food truck, he spoke. So there was a little bit of people there. But there was also questions about outreach, like, hey, there's much more food truck people, and there's one person here. So, again, City Hall trying, but not doing the outreach they need to actually make a decision.
what I was hearing on that was that what was really motivating this is countywide. It's not just the city, but at the city level, but especially, there are a lot, the vendors that they're worried about are people who kind of come in from LA and then they go back to LA and there's some talk of, human trafficking and that, the people who are working there are under duress and this is how they're sort of paying off their passage. But there's a couple of operators out of LA that have been really, to steal that phrase, flooding the zone. And they've been setting up off 154 and Highway 154, which is not really a very safe road, even in the best of circumstances, and have people pulling off over there is kind of a menace. But because of state laws that have been passed recently to sort of give vendors a safer space, there's very limited tools of enforcement and regulation at local governments' hands. So the county or the city has to do this to deal with that issue. I heard, and Ryan, I think you might know better just because you're friends with him, but I heard Jonah Reds, who on Lower State Street said, I'm just getting my lunch eaten by the competition from some of these guys, that he was moving from Lower State to Upper State because of that.
There's a lot of established restaurateurs that say that this takes away from their business. I think personally this ordinance that's coming on is more for those late night ones at on Milpa Street and over by San Andreas, and those kind of serve the bars that are open late night over there. People go out of the bars, they want some tacos late at night, and I understand wanting to crack down on unpermitted things, but I just question if this is the time to do it, with everything that's going on, or maybe use a little bit of discretion and tact and looking for the LA ones or ones that are outside of the bounds of what they're really looking to do. I think you got to be careful about making sweeping things against the Latino community right now.
I think right now your point's really good. Right now it becomes radioactive.
Yeah, good point. All right, we got to get out, but before we go, Ryan, you had a piece on this 250 room hotel on Garden Street that we've been reading and writing about since the McKinley administration. Now the opponents have sued to stop it and also filed an appeal with the Coastal Commission. Where does that stand?
Yeah, so the lawsuit was filed in county court January 17th, and then there was the Coastal Commission appeal filed also. So that kind of puts a stop to the coastal development permit and the approval for now. And the Coastal Commission is going to take a look at it and see, if it finds a substantial issue. Now, a lot of the issues being raised are the same ones that were raised at City Council, which were, it is underground parking lot, not that far away from the beach, is going to be pretty risky. And there's, they don't know what's down there under. And the development team said that they weren't going to really go and, categorize what kind of contaminants were there until they could get access to the site. They wanted approval from the city. Now, the city's approval, there was kind of some politics at play there. There's talk about we can't break our promise. There was this deal that
was that I forget. Was that a split vote that it was approved?
It was a no. It wasn't necessarily a split vote. There was only Kristen Sneddon and Oscar Gutierrez were the only ones that were gonna vote again or gonna allow the appeal, and everybody else voted to deny the appeal and uphold the approval because there was a lot of questions over whether the city should go back on a development deal with the developer when we have the La Cumbre Plaza and the Paseo Nuevo things happening. But, now the elections are over, so I don't know how that's going to factor into it now. And the Coastal Commission isn't really worried about that. Now, I think it makes sense to have an environmental review on something this big right there. I think skipping and having an exemption is a little, it's pushing through very fast. I covered these meetings all along the way. And, there was definitely a rush from the development side to kind of get this through and, get the approval. So
Josh, you wrote a lot about this. What's your thought on the merits?
Well, I think Mark Shatillo is the attorney, and so I think that my sense is, Megan Harmon was on the council and, she denied the appeal. She's on the Coastal Commission. My sense is that this hotel is going to get built. It's just a matter of time. I would be surprised if the Coastal Commission said they couldn't build it. Now, will they say there needs to be an EIR because of the potential flooding? They could order it back and have that done, and who knows. But I got the sense from the council that they felt as though their hands were tied because they had agreed to this development agreement years ago, and there was nothing they could do. And then they're scared to death. They're going to get sued by the developer if they denied it.
There was a bit of that sense where I think at least Eric Friedman kind of articulated that, they denied the appeal, kind of knowing there might be more pushback. There might be another appeal at the Coastal Commission. There might be a lawsuit, which did happen. So, I think some of the council members expected this was going to happen, and they were just making sure they were on solid ground.
Who are the plaintiffs in the lawsuit? Who's
the city of Santa Barbara is, I believe.
They're the defendants, no?
Yeah. Oh, the plaintiff is Keep the Funk, Inc. And that's
who is Keep the Funk?
Keep the Funk, Inc. So there's the president is named Brittany Zajic, and she's been since the beginning, pushing back against this hotel. And I think there was another development called Somo Funk, and that kind of got the brakes put on it too. And those were the two big ones that really made this organization come together.
These are like business organizations for the Funk Zone? Or
yeah, a lot of local business owners, artists, and people that kind of just like the vibe of the Funk Zone, the way it is, the way it kind of grew organically over the years. And, it became really trendy with breweries and really like these hot spots of retail and nice coffee shops, but it kind of grew that way organically. So they're kind of wanting to make it, they're not against the hotel altogether, but they think it's too big. But like Josh says, it's going to be hard to put the brakes on this in the end.
I mean, I think one of the things that's going to make it really hard for the Coastal Commission, aside from the fact that there was this agreement, but they are proposing to build moderately priced hotels. So for families who want to stay in Santa Barbara for a long term, like a week or something, they could get what would be a relatively speaking affordable rate compared to the other hotels around town. And so if you're the Coastal Commission and you want the waterfront in the coastal area to be accessible to the whole state, it has a stronger than usual case to be made for it.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there. Thanks to Josh Molina, Ryan Cruz, and Nick Welsh. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time on Newsmakers.
Thank you.
We'll see you.